Good evening and welcome to the Drive at 5 on the IntellectualRadio.com/iHeart radio station. I'm your host, Roman, and we have a great show planned for you today. But first, the forecast from our IntellectualRadio.com Weather Center. Today, clouds giving way to some sun. However, it will be cold, breezy with flurries in the area, high 30 degrees tonight. Clear and cold, low 17 degrees tomorrow, partly sunny, high 33 degrees tomorrow night, cloudy, windy, and warmer, low 30 degrees. Wednesday, cloudy and mild, high 44 degrees. On Thursday, temps takes a dive again, breezy and partly sunny skies with 7 degrees. And on Friday, sunny and cold, high 23 degrees. The Drive at 5 is also part of the new Monday night lineup, starting with a new show called At 4 o'clock, 50 Shades of Business Growth Policy Matters with Jerry Brown at 6 p.m., New Black Leadership at 7 p.m., Black Community Unity at 8 p.m., 9 p.m., Chronicles of Ron, and the Mic Up. You know why they call it the Mic Up?
I don't know. Why do they call it the Mic Up?
Because the mic is always up at 10 p.m. Also, the Drive at 5 is also part of the fabulous 5 at 5, only on IntellectualRadio.com. Today, my guest to my left is a project manager of Austin Coming Together in the Austin community. Please give a Drive at 5 welcome to Miss Vanessa Stokes. Welcome to the Drive.
Thank you, Roman.
Please give IntellectualRadio.com/iHeart radio station your background.
Well, I work at Austin Coming Together as the Neighborhood Stabilization Coordinator. So I'm working with homeowners, existing homeowners, and helping to get more folks incentives to move to Austin, or people who are looking to purchase in Austin. So I'm working with the city of Chicago with the micro market recovery program area. And basically what that is it's an area within Austin that needs to be stabilized. The housing needs to be stabilized because there's a lot of vacant homes. So what I do is help to find pre-approved buyers and help to spread the information to the Austin community so they can take advantage of the incentives that are there. The incentives are for people who are purchasing $15,000 forgivable loan. And for those who are already existing homeowners in Austin, there is Elevate Energy, and they help to retrofit people's homes with energy efficiency. And then also there are other incentives for people who are having problems with their homes, like say if they're going through foreclosure or if they're just having problems, we can help them with resources.
So, in a nutshell, that's what Austin Coming Together programs provide, right?
Well, that's one of the programs that we have that we work on at Austin Coming Together.
So, what are some of the programs?
Austin Coming Together is a relationship building organization. So we have 70 odd member organizations, and we help to connect those resources to the people of the Austin community and also to different organizations. So we kind of bridge that gap and bring together people and organizations to kind of give the Austin community what they need. So that's basically what Austin Coming Together does. And another one of the projects that we're working on is the Quality of Life Plan. So through LISC Chicago and through the city of Chicago, we are the lead agency on the Quality of Life Plan. It's a community-driven plan. The community is the one that drives the plan. And basically there are working groups around certain areas to help basically plan the Austin community. So right now we're in the last phase of the Quality of Life Plan. So we already had 2 summits. The first summit was around trying to figure out what the community needs. The second one was to vote on different action items that the working groups had came about. And then the third one, which will be coming up in May or June of this year, will help to culminate all of that and help to bring about the actual plan. It's an actual book that will be produced to help get leverage and get resources to the Austin community.
Let me play devil's advocate with
Okay,
you,
please.
if I can.
Please
Okay,
play.
for a
Let's
minute.
play.
Let's say I'm one of the people that's out there. Here is another organization coming to our community, giving these peppermint rainbow analogy programs. However, the reality, it doesn't change. It don't change anything that's out there. So convince me the reality of what's going on and how your program is going to affect the change, how it's going to curve the problems that's out there, because people not seeing it.
Well, I mean, I think we are one of the ways that are helping to create a transformation in the Austin community. The other part is the people. Now, people have to become involved in their community. They can't just expect these organizations in the city and all of these people and places and things to do what their community needs to do. The community needs to make that happen. That's the difference. We get folks in the community to create this transformation. Now, are we going to touch all 90,000 odd people in the community of Austin? Because Austin is the largest community by area and population. So there's over 90,000 people that live in Austin. Unfortunately, we probably won't touch all of those people. But we're hoping through what we're doing with the quality of life plan, through the micro market recovery program, and also through the restorative justice hub that we are creating in Austin coming together. By these things, we can create this transformation and help to bring about the change that everybody wants in the Austin community.
You were speaking about transformation. What is the transformation you're talking about?
Well, I think that everybody wants to live in a safe community. They want to live in a safe community where people have jobs, where people have nice homes, where there's good schools and places for people to shop and have a real community. And I think that's the transformation that everybody's looking for. They're looking for a place to call home, a place that where they have seen in the past to be a certain way. Because I talked to a lot of residents from Austin that have been living in Austin since the 60s and 70s, and it's completely different than when it was back then. There were grocery stores, it was thriving, the schools were good, people talked to their neighbors, there was minimal violence. And so that's the kind of transformation that the community wants. And we're helping to bring about that.
But why the community is not getting it?
Well, I think because the community is not coming outside. People don't come outside. People don't engage with their neighbors. They don't engage in the community. They just complain. They say, oh, look at that. That's bad. You know, they don't say, oh, look at that, that's bad. What can I do to help to make it the way it's supposed to be? They don't ask those questions. They don't go to their public officials to see how they can help. They go to the public officials to complain. So a lot of public officials sometimes get bogged down with a lot of complaints instead of finding ways to create this transformation within the community. So, you know, the way I see it is, you know, people just got to get up. They got to get up. They got to get out. They got to sit on their porch. They got to talk to their neighbors. They got to, you know, get other people involved, get young people involved, get schools involved, children involved. But from what I've seen, not a whole lot of people do that. They kind of stay in their little bubble. They watch the news. You know, and they get freaked out because they seeing all this stuff on the news and it's saying all this negative stuff when they don't have any of that going on their block. It's a very small area within Austin that are problems. Austin's huge, so there's not a whole lot of problems in Austin, but media has a tendency to focus on that.
You mentioned the politicians.
Yeah.
Here comes Mr. and Mrs. Politician. I bring my problems to them. Nothing is being done.
Mm-hmm.
I beg and plead. Nothing is being done.
Right.
So you're saying this is what they want to see. They want to see a grocery store with all the amenities. They want to have the banks. They want to have a safe place to live. The doctor, doctors, lawyers, and the list goes on and on. It's not like they complain about it. It's not like they don't want these things. They go to the public official. They say, all right, every 4 years. This is year 4 now. Then they start doing something. Give me your vote, and I'll set you free.
Yeah.
Give me your vote. I'll make sure that your garbage get taken out, which they could have been doing that all along. You say?
Well, when it comes to public officials, I think this is across the board a lot of times in the Chicago area, is that they lack vision. A lot of public officials lack vision. They get in office and they kind of lose sight of the actual community. That's one of the issues that is in Austin. I mean, just from my point of view, I see a lot of public officials that have a lot of power to do a whole lot of things, but they just unfortunately don't have a whole lot of vision and they don't know also how to connect the dots to make things happen. Now, I'm not saying it's easy. I'm not saying being a public official is an easy job, because there's a lot that goes into that. But I also think that with the kind of connections and the kind of power that public officials have on the West Side, there should be a whole heck of a lot more going on than it is right now. So, I mean, I'm kind of in agreement with you, Roman, because
Kind of.
yeah, I'm in agreement with you. I think that there could be more done. And I do believe that this group of people that have connections are able to make things connect and make things happen don't really do that too often.
You mentioned foreclosure. Austin has one of the highest foreclosure rates in the state of Illinois. Blacks are worried about the high taxes. It is forcing Blacks to move into the suburbs or the state altogether. How can a person keep their home that they've been living in for years? How they can keep their home saying, I've been doing this, I've been paid, but I can't do both. I can't, if the mortgage goes up and the taxes goes up. I mean, I've been doing what I'm supposed to be doing. You say?
Well, there are a number of ways that people have been living in their homes can take advantage of different incentives or opportunities. So one of the things that a lot of people don't know is the tax exemptions. So there's a number of tax exemptions for your property that you could get that can help pay down on some of those bills.
What are some of those taxes?
One of them is like a homeowner exemption. And a lot of people don't know that if you live in your home, you could get an exemption for that. There's also exemptions for seniors. Also, there's another exemption for if you live in your home more than 10 years. And there's also one last one, which is called senior freeze. It's not so much an exemption, but what it does, it helps to freeze people's their rate, their tax rate to what it is, and it stays that way. So, I mean, there's a lot of different things that people can do to help them with resources that are available in their home. There's also, like I said, there's free foreclosure counseling. There's foreclosure counseling for people who need help. There's a lot of different refinancing, and I think it's called Illinois Refi, where you can refinance your home at a really low rate. So there's a lot of different opportunities for people to take advantage of. The issue is that people don't know.
And why they don't know?
Well, this goes right back to being civically engaged. It goes back to being connected to the community. The reason why our community was the way it was back in the day is because people were connected to each other.
But is that a leadership problem?
Yes, it is a leadership problem. I think it's a leadership problem because the leaders in the community don't know how to really get on the ground floor to really connect with the people, to give them what they need. There's not a whole lot of that going on. And, having, info session here and there is just not enough. Like, you need to do more than that. And especially getting youth involved. I think that is really important because they are our next leaders. We need youth involved in civic engagement. We need youth involved in becoming leaders and having a mentorship program to kind of bring about these leaders in our community.
Another situation is Hispanics are moving in predominantly Black areas. Some saying they're even taking over their community. Real estate companies are not selling to Blacks, not mentioning no names, in order to keep them other Blacks from buying those properties. Do you agree what Chris Kennedy said a couple of weeks ago, that the taxes and what the county assessor's office is doing are forcing Blacks out of their homes by taxing them away and forcing them to move into the suburbs or moving away from Chicago as a whole?
Well, I think it's a multi-layered situation. I think it is. Living in the city is really expensive. There's a lot of more taxes here in Cook County than any other county in the country. So there's that issue. And of course, if you're not making a livable wage, it's going to make it even harder for you to do anything in the city. So yes, I think that's one of the issues. But I also think that it's issues like violence. I think it's issues with livable wage jobs, that a lot of people are working 2 and 3 jobs just to make a livable wage, which takes them away from their family, takes them away from other things that they could be doing in the community. So there's a lot of different issues, I think, that are causing people to leave. And I think the majority, to be honest with you, is just the livable wage. Like, I think that people are leaving because the job industry in Chicago is changing. It's not the way it was 15, 20 years ago, where you could get a skilled labor job. It's not like that anymore, even though the manufacturing sector is needing people. They need people like welders and, advanced manufacturing jobs that do pay well, and they're with livable wage, and you don't have to go to college for. So I think that all of these things together, when people don't know and they don't have the information, what the first thing they're going to do is be like, well, it's not going to fit me anymore. I need to leave.
Trump said that Black unemployment rate is the lowest it's ever been. You say?
I don't believe anything that man says. That's all I have to say.
Okay.
I mean, he's from, I'm going to take it from.
But according to statistics.
Yeah,
according to statistics, African Americans, I'm just going by Chicago,
right,
has the highest unemployment rate. And that can be backed up by the census, that can be backed up by political,
right,
that can be backed up by the Chicago Tribune and the Chicago Sun-Times.
Right.
How your organization is going to tackle that rate where you have a president saying, you know what, the unemployment rate in an African American is down as it ever been.
Right. Well, I think it goes back to re-educating people about the different types of industries that are available where you can find a livable wage job. And I think the advanced manufacturing sector is something that a lot of people aren't tapped into. And trade jobs a lot of people aren't tapped into that, where you can be a welder, for instance, and make $65,000, $70,000 a year, even more. But there's issues around that by transportation, like getting people to those areas. But one of the things that I do believe is if people know that these things are going on, that there are jobs and sectors and industries that need people, I think that we need to do is get those people in those positions. So we do have at Austin coming together. One of our partners, one of our members is JARC, Jane Addams Resource Corporation, and they work with trade positions, trade jobs. So we have an advanced manufacturing training facility in Austin, at Austin High School. It's free, and for people who would like to learn more about advanced manufacturing. And some of the people that have gone through that program have been placed at Freeman Seating, which is a manufacturing company on the west side. And they do like, I believe they make like seats and insides of buses and trains and whatnot in Chicago, but all over the world. So, I mean, there are opportunities for people. There's tons of them, but we just don't know the opportunities are there. So we need to get people to know that these things are here for them so they can tap into them and not leave their home. I mean, Chicago is a great city, and I think that people really want to stay here. They want to be here, but we have to make it available for them. So that's what we're doing at ASA Coming Together.
The STD rates in the Austin community is skyrocketing amongst teens and young adults. The transgender rate is rising to astronomical levels in the Austin community as well. What is Austin Coming Together is doing to curb the STD rate problem in the Austin community that they currently have?
We don't really, we're not really a programming organization. We have programs that actually help young people in those issues. But we do have organizations that we work with that do work with youth and do have programming within what they do to help get the word out and get information to the kids about STDs and different sexually transmitted diseases. It really goes back to, like, people just need to talk to kids and let them know what's going on. Like, I've known a lot of people not to get information from their own parents about sex. We need to be honest with our children about sexual intercourse. We need to be honest with children about the realities of us being human beings. And we just don't, a lot of folks just kind of just don't, they miss the mark on that. They don't talk about it. It's kind of like homosexuality in the Black community. We don't talk about it. It's like we don't talk about molestation in the Black community. Anything to do with sex in the Black community, we don't talk about it. We need to stop that. And we need to be real and start talking.
You think that we're ashamed of talking about sex? I don't think so.
Well, I think that there's I think that we hold tradition to high standards in the Black community. And I think that traditionally in America, there are some things that we just don't talk about. We just don't. And I think that that's one of the things we don't talk about. And it's just more extreme in the Black community. We just don't talk about things like that. But we need to start. We need to start talking more about it, because I think that'll help curb a lot of the issues that we have.
So please give IntellectualRadio.com/iHeartRadio station your information so they can get in contact with you.
Sure. You could go to www.austinComingTogether.org to see all of the different things that we have going on at Austin Coming Together, our hub. So we're becoming a restorative justice hub. So within that, we're going to be having a lot of different info sessions, a lot of different circles around just youth, and just bringing back people to restore them back to their original state. So restorative justice is a way to help a traumatized community to heal. So that's what we're doing at Austin Coming Together with our hub. And you can get more information on our website.
And you're part of the regentrification in the Austin community through the paintings of your father. So please explain that.
So my father, Darrell Crichton, was a freelance advertising photographer and had the first Black-owned photography studio in Chicago. He passed away 7 years ago and left a very large archive of negatives and prints. So we're figuring there's around 300,000 images in the collection, and we have gotten a number of installations in the Austin community. So there's one in the Austin Green Line Station, another one in the Central Green Line Station, and also there are some images underneath the viaduct on Laramie in between Kinsey and Lake. I just wanted to help show the Black community. I just wanted to remind them of who we are. And the images are all of Black people just living life and being happy. So I just wanted people to remember that. And when they go about their day and going to work and coming home, that they see some positive images. So that's why I did it. But I'm working on a number of other projects in the Austin community. Nothing is solid yet, but within the next year, you'll be seeing more.
Okay, and hopefully you'll come back.
Oh,
See?
yeah.
It's not that bad. I can't shake with this hand. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
When we
Thank you
come
for
back
having me,
on the
Carmen.
Drive at 5 on intellectualradio.com/iHeart radio station, writer, producer, and director Mario Tharp is here to talk about the documentary called Fighting on Both Fronts when we come back on the Drive. Thanks again.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Yes. And we're back on the Drive at 5 on intellectualradio.com/iHeart radio station. A new documentary featuring the Black Infantry Division of World War I that was based on the South Side of Chicago National Guard unit in Bronzeville. Please give a Drive at 5 welcome to writer, producer, and director Mario Tharp. Welcome to the Drive.
Welcome. Thank you, sir. How are you?
I'm fine. You got that night move voice. You want to introduce a song or something?
Well, it's people. I'm sorry. People do tell me I have a radio voice, so maybe I should be sitting where you are.
Oh yeah. Please give intellectualradio.com/iHeart radio station your background.
Sure. As you said, I am a writer, producer, and director. Most of my experience has been in television. But I've ventured off a little bit to film, documentary film. I've done a lot of documentaries over the years. Been in the business for, I won't tell you how old I am. Let's just say for over 20 years. I've worked on a lot of television shows, History Channel, Discovery Channel, some local channels here in Chicago, BET, TV One, Weather Channel. I've done a lot of stuff in the TV business, but jumped into, I don't want to jump ahead of your questions. So
no, go ahead. Go ahead.
But jumped into this amazing project, man, that was brought to me by, there's a film company, production company called Media Process Group, and it's co-owned by Bob Hercules and Keith Walker. And these guys do amazing work. And they've won a number of awards for a lot of their projects over the years. So Media Process Group was approached by WTTW Channel 11 about this fascinating story about these African-American soldiers who fought during World War I, the majority of them from Chicago. And because I'd worked with Bob and Keith before, they called me in and said, hey, we want to talk to you about this project. We think will be phenomenal. Really right. I sat down with them. I said talk to them over the phone first, and then we went in and met, and then we went and met with the folks at WTTW. And I was just blown away by the subject matter, man, because it's not one of those stories or topics that you hear a lot about. You know, me being a Chicagoan and even living in Bronzeville for a number of years, I didn't know anything about the Victory Monument, which is a statue that's located on 35th and King Drive that was dedicated to these soldiers back in 1927, years after they came back from World War I. And I just instantly said, I got to do it. So I was working on something else, and everything became secondary. This was my number one priority. And it was just an amazing experience.
So you was working on another project. You dropped everything to do
I
this.
didn't drop it, but this became my number
That's
one
what
priority.
you allude to.
Oh, I know. What I'm saying is that I refocused because this really needed all of my attention. I was so into this project. I obviously had to read a lot of material. It was history. And it's just like any project that a producer, writer, director works on. You really need to just take all of your time and just learn about it. And because it's something that I unfortunately did not know a lot about, I grabbed as much research material as I could from, thank God for Google. But I still spend a lot of time at the library going into my microfiche and just looking through a lot of material. But, a lot of books and researching by calling people. Thank goodness for unlimited minutes, because I would have had a very expensive phone bill. But it was just an amazing time. And, we're fortunate enough, and I guess we'll talk a little about the film so the listeners will know what it's about. But the film initially aired November 10th for Veterans Day, locally here on WTTW. And even before the film aired on TTW, it was picked up to run nationally. So, and that's something that doesn't happen all the time, especially before the film even airs the first time. So it is now beginning February, in honor of Black History Month, February 1st, PBS stations throughout the country can have the opportunity to sign on and take take the film, the documentary film, and air it on their local PBS station. So right now, I think we have about 40 stations that have signed on. But I think the window that they have to air it is at least a year. So that means that they can, beginning February 1st, the stations have let's say until the next February 1st to run this film. And it may be a year and a half. I'm not 100% sure. But
why now to tell this story? You had plenty of time. Why now?
Well, I didn't have plenty of time. But no. So it was, a funding thing, right? So, I mean, everything that, when it comes to TV and film, you got to have money to put this together. And we were fortunate enough that there was is an organization who funded this program. And I guess I can say it because we say it at the end of the film, but the McCormick Foundation decided that they wanted to fund this idea. So that's where the money came from. But again, it was just one of those subject matters that it really came it's better late than never. So the topic should have been addressed years ago. But like so many things when it comes to Black history, it wasn't covered, at least to the extent that it should have been. So, there were articles written about this topic. There were some books written. Professor Christopher Reed, who's a professor emeritus at Roosevelt University, he's also affiliated with the DuSable Museum. He sits on their board. He wrote a number of books over the years, and he talked about the 370th. But there has never been a full documentary or film done about these heroic men. And, we're talking about nearly 3,000 soldiers who are, majority of them from Chicago's Bronzeville area, but there were a number of them from Springfield, from Danville, Peoria, Metropolis, Illinois, and they all went off to World War I. And you have to remember that during that time, and even during World War II, the military and the army was segregated. So these guys, number one, during the early 1900s, were here in the United States, and they experienced a great deal of discrimination and racism just because of that time. I mean, it's still happening now, but it was really bad during that period. It's happening now. I don't necessarily mean within the military. I'm just saying within the world itself. And excuse me. But when they went off to Europe to fight this war, World War I, they continued to experience a lot of racism and prejudice. And it was really bad because these guys felt like, hey, we are soldiers. And they were National Guardsmen. We are in this other country fighting for the United States, a country that we want to be treated as equals. They really were fighting for patriotism. And they did a stellar job. But again, they were suffering and dealing with a lot of discrimination to the point where they didn't even fight with the American army. they fought with the French army. So imagine being a soldier from the United States and you can't fight with the US Army because of a number of reasons. But one, the main one, in my opinion, and also the opinion of historians, is because of racism. You can't fight. You can come and serve. We'll give you labor roles. You can bury the dead. You can, you can load and unload ships. But we don't want you to necessarily fight with us. So that's just, and then they came back and they suffered the same discrimination, the same racism. So and we discuss all of those things. We start with how these soldiers, where they came from, and we talked about the Chicago Defender. We really tried to spend a good deal of time discussing the role that the Chicago Defender newspaper had.
What was the role Chicago Defender played?
Well, Robert Abbott, who was the owner, publisher of the founder of the Chicago Defender newspaper, as well as a few others around the country, but the Chicago Defender being the main one. He supported these soldiers. He felt that, it was okay for African American men, just like these soldiers did, to go and fight during war or go off to war, because it was the way, this is how we're going to show America and white America that we are equals, or we want to be treated as equals. We're here to fight alongside you. So the Defender played a major role in getting getting blacks, African Americans, to move from the South to the North. And a lot of them, this is the Great Migration. So a lot of them settled within the Bronzeville area, which back then it was known as the Black Belt or the South Side. I mean, some people still call it the South Side, but the majority of people called it the Black Belt. So Robert Abbott, he played a major role in encouraging folks to join the war, and then also to move to the North.
You have doctors, businessmen, and other prestigious Black men that suited up to serve and protect Americans. However, they were not welcome into the Army, which you pointed out, but still they fought and protect this country despite being disrespected by America.
Right.
Imagine yourself in today's society. How can you describe that reaction? You fought for your country.
Right.
They're telling African American men, football players now, to stand up, pledge allegiance to our flag. You're disrespecting our military. But when this come out, your thoughts on that?
Well, here, let me tell you a story. And we had a screening at an event called the Doc Talks up north at a venue, which was really enlightening to be in this venue with other filmmakers. Bob Hercules and I were there. And I told this story that Professor Christopher Reed, when I interviewed him, I'm in my early 40s, actually 28, but but I'm in my early 40s, and was interviewing Professor Reed. And I'm talking to him about this here, about how it's hard for me to understand how these soldiers or men back then would volunteer. A lot of them were drafted, but were okay with going off to the war and fighting for a country that did not respect or honor them. And I kept trying to ask him, he was answering it, but it was hard for me as an interviewer to understand it. And he stopped the interview and he said, Mario, what don't you understand? That what you're saying you would have a difficult time doing now, they were okay with, because they really felt like they were showing the world that they were patriotic, that they wanted to be treated as equals. And I kept going back and saying, but Professor Reed, but they were facing discrimination when they were here. So why do they think it would be better for them when they went over there? I wouldn't go. I just wouldn't do it. I wouldn't volunteer. I would find a way to get out of it. And he said, but that's not what they wanted to do. So after talking to him off camera a little bit, and I felt bad because I've been doing this for years, right? I should get it.
Mm-hmm.
But it made sense that we were living in a different time. And how we suffer some things now as it relates to discrimination and racism, as you can't compare it to what these guys were going through. Black folk were still being hung and lynched back then. There is a part of the story that we kind of talk about a little bit, but we don't go into great detail about how a particular division, a regiment from another state, not our guys, not the 370th, they went to train in Houston, in Camp Logan in Houston, Texas, before going off to World War I. These soldiers from this other division, this other regiment, were facing same thing, discrimination. The local cops not injured, I actually think killed one of the soldiers or some African American that was down there. And these soldiers felt like, look, you local guys are not going to abuse and we're not going to have these problems. And so they stood up for, and I don't remember if it was an African American woman or one of the soldiers, black soldiers, but they took to arms and they went into town and they shot up the cops and some other folks. Well, it was, not necessarily self-defense, I guess, but it was these soldiers saying, look, you're not going to do that to us or to our people. Well, these soldiers were court-martialed and they wind up, a number of them were hung. And then a lot of them were sent to prison. So, we're talking a totally different time. So for me, it was kind of difficult to understand, but I also had to remove myself from at this time I was interviewing Christopher Reed, 2017, and put myself back into 1915, 1916. So it did start to make sense after a while.
As I was watching the documentary over the weekend.
Good, you watched it, man. All right.
It reminded me of the movie called Hidden Figures, because fighting on both fronts is a part of our history that is not in our textbook,
right?
Not in our Black history lessons, right. Not even talked about on the airwaves until now.
Right.
This another important piece of history that has been hidden from us in our history, in our culture.
Right.
You said it was right there all along. But why we ignore this piece of history? Why you think we ignore it?
Because we don't know it's there. So,
But our previous guest said we got to get out. We got to venture out to get to know what's there.
It's right. So I think, it's a few things. As I said, I lived in Bronzeville and drove past 35th and King Drive on almost a daily basis to get home.
And you're faced with that statue.
Yeah, but I had no idea what it is or what it represented. There are a number of monuments and statues around the city that people see on a daily basis, and they don't focus in on it. They don't pay attention. Sometimes I think we're waiting for things to be brought to us, and that's something that we should not do. There is, and you got to know where to go look for it. So unless somebody decided, well, let me study, Chicago's the history of Chicago's military, or let me study monuments in Chicago, or let me study Bronzeville, then you would have learned a little bit about the 370th, or these guys used to also be known as the 8th Illinois before they went off to war. But you almost have to go looking for it, because it's not going to be presented to you. It's not in the history books. It's not being taught in school. And it should be. But that's why it's important for us to decide, I want to read. I want to learn as much as possible, because it is there. You just got to find it.
The biggest problem with this story is...
Uh-oh.
The biggest problem with this story is not out for the masses to see. It's not like Lil Wayne is in there. Or convince the mothers, the fathers. We got 2 children in the studio now. Convince that mother they should watch this.
Well, so I mean, it's just a great part of history, and it, and that's why I have been all over the place, speaking about the film, from television to radio to newspaper, to magazine articles, because I do feel that it's important to get this story out. It's not even 30 minutes. It's 27 and a half minutes of a history lesson that you would never hear about again. Probably will. Let's hopefully hear about again. But it's great for everyone. I had a screening the other day, and there was on Saturday, and there was a young girl there with her, I think, grandmother and mom and aunt maybe. And the young lady was maybe 8, 9, and she was into it. So, I don't know if there's a really way for me to convince people, but all I can simply say is that this is a 27 and a half minute film that you can just learn so much. I mean, even the race riots, we talk about the 1919 race riots and how Chicago was impacted and how Chicago was included in what was called the Red Summer, where there were race riots throughout the entire country. But these soldiers of the 370th protected the Bronzeville area when the white mobs from the Bridgeport area and some of the other parts of the city tried to come to Bronzeville, to the Black Belt, to attack the Black citizens. So, I mean, there's so much that we've covered that I think everybody should watch it.
What is the most important lesson you have learned while doing the documentary?
That history matters. That it is. It's just so much, man. I mean, even jazz music. As I'm thinking about these things, stuff is popping in my head. And how these soldiers and the soldiers of the 369th used to be called the Harlem Hellfighters, because they're from Harlem, New York. Excuse me. How they had bands, and they later became, it was jazz bands. So these soldiers from the 370th and the 369th took these guys. I mean, took music. Jazz. Now, back then it was a ragtime, but it's jazz music over to France. So blacks introduced jazz music to Europe, to France. So it's just so much history. That's an important part for me that I did not know, and just the impact that these guys of the 370 have played in the history of Chicago. It's an unknown story. And it's a story that people should really want to learn about.
So when does the
it re-airs again, starting on a national basis, or national run on February 8th at 8 p.m. and then it re-airs at 8:30 p.m. on February 9th. But it's also available right now on WTTW.com. So what you have to do is go to the Channel 11 website and type in the title of the film, which is Fighting on Both Fronts: The Story of the 370th. And or just type in part of it, and it'll come up, and they can just watch the film. But everybody should watch it. Again, we've talked about so much, or we talk about so much in this film, until it's I tell you, it's the best 27 and a half minutes you'll spend in a very long time, Roman.
How they can get a hold of you?
A hold of me? Well, I'm on Facebook, Mario Tharpe, THARPE, and I got to tell you, since this film has come out, I haven't accepted a whole lot of people, but a whole lot of friend requests. But I'm on Facebook. I am, my bio and everything is listed online. And just continue to look out for work from Media Process Group, which is, just a great group of guys that's doing a lot of wonderful films. And then continue to look out for work for myself, because I'm staying busy as well.
Okay. Hopefully you'll come back on. See, it's not that bad.
Maybe. We'll see. Next time, have some food and some drinks in here, man. No, man.
Yeah. Well, thanks again,
Okay.
and good luck. It's already a success. I see another Emmy in your future.
Oh, well, thanks, man.
Thanks. No problem.
All
We go way back.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
So thanks a lot to our executive producer, Earl Winfrey, Wanda, who is behind the scenes, and guess what? the Super Bowl. Who you got? I don't know. I'm still up in the air. So we'll talk about that later on. But have a good week, everyone. See you next week.
All right.